All right, let's go through the grading policy. I am going to read through this with you. Feel free to pause as needed and ask questions if you need to along the way. So, our grading philosophy. The number one goal in our classroom is learning. The grading policy reflects and supports this goal. Life Science 7 will be using a grading policy based on many ideals of standards-based grading. Students will be graded on their knowledge of the standards. Many of the things that we do in class and that students do outside of class will not be graded and directly reflected in the gradebook, but may, however, be collected and returned with feedback. That doesn't mean you're not going to get grades. So, what will your gradebook look like? Instead of assignments, tests, quizzes, projects, etc., learning targets will be put into the gradebook. So you will see learning targets have been created from the Minnesota State Standards, and they'll be evaluated with a combination of practice work and assessments. So classwork, homework, class discussions, quizzes, tests, projects. We will use a 4-3-2-1 scale that will be used to evaluate student knowledge of each learning target. So when we look at this, the 4 means that the student has mastered the content, understanding of the learning target with depth, and is able to apply the concept to multiple contexts independently, meaning you can use it independently in multiple different places. A 3 means that the student has mastered the content, understanding of the learning target, but does not apply the concept to multiple contexts. You may only be able to apply it in one place. A 2 means that you show some understanding of the learning target, but you lack the ability to apply the content to more than one context. So you may or may not even be able to apply it in that location. A 1 means that you have a basic understanding and you lack the ability to fully apply it to even one context. So you can get some of it, but not all of it. And an NE means that you show no evidence of understanding the learning target and you're unable to apply it to different contexts, even with help from the teacher. If you are scoring an NE, that is something that will be added as missing in the gradebook, and you should keep working on it so that you can increase your score. And ultimately, the main goal is increasing your understanding of the material. So how do we calculate your grade when we're using the 4-3-2-1 scale? So your academic grade is determined by both summative and formative assessments, 90% summative, and all the learning targets are created from the Minnesota State Standards for 7th grade. These describe what each student should know and be able to do at the end of instruction. This part of the grade will reflect your student knowledge and ability based on student performance through tests, quizzes, projects, or other type of evidence that students show content understanding at the end of instruction. So 90% of your score will come from there. 10% of your score will come from formative assessments. It's also important to recognize growth throughout the semester. Each student has had different prior experiences that lead to a different level of understanding of the topics of life science. This part of the grade reflects student progress as learning is happening. Keywords there being as learning is happening. I don't expect you to be an expert when I'm giving you a formative assessment. Most of the items that fall into this category are considered practice work for learning, homework, and classwork. When you take those scores, the 90% and the 10%, and they go into the gradebook, we do use a modified grading scale. So it is different than the standard Waconia Middle School grading scale because the 4-3-2-1-NE calculates differently. So to earn an A, that means that you would need to get 93.8% or higher to earn an A. An 87.5 to a 93.7 is going to calculate out to an A minus. An 81.3 to an 87.6 will be a B plus. Where it really starts to look drastically different is that a 50% to a 62% on a regular middle school grading scale would be in the D range. Here it's in the C range. And the reason is because when we look at this information here, if you're scoring a 2, you're showing some understanding and you just can't apply it. That really is C-level work. And that's why the percentages appear different on the grading scale as well. If you're getting a 1, you're still able to do some of the work. That doesn't mean that you should get an F. That puts you in the D range instead. So that's why the number calculation looks different when we put it into percentages in the grade book. You still may find that you want to improve your grade. So how can you improve your academic grade? Learning is as dynamic as it is important for students to have the opportunity to continue to show their understanding of content. Grades are in progress until the last day of each quarter. Students have the option to retake all assessments until a mark of 4 is achieved. In order to complete a retake, students will need to make a plan with Mrs. Heiss, which would include going over the original test, completing test corrections, then determining what practice work needs to be completed before the retake. All of this would need to be completed before the retake will be provided. In addition, all practice work that was used to learn the topic must also be completed before the retake if it wasn't completed previously. You may want to consider doing a retake if you score a 2 or less. If you score an NE or a 1, you should strongly consider doing a retake. You will also receive a process grade, so what personal management skills will be evaluated through the process grade. In addition to academic grades, all students will receive feedback on their process of learning or personal management. This process grade is broken into 3 categories: preparedness, engagement, and work completion and quality. The life science expectation for each category are described below. For preparedness, all students in Life Science 7 are expected to come to class on time with a pencil, a charged device, science folder and notebook, headphones, along with all work completed and be ready to learn. Engagement. In Life Science 7, all students are expected to be engaged all of the time. This means that students are staying focused in class activities, following directions well, staying on task, participating well in group activities, raising his or her hand to ask and or answer questions, and advocating for himself or herself as needed. Work completion and quality. Life Science 7 is fast-paced and full of high-level content and vocabulary, which makes it very important to stay caught up on practice work throughout the semester. Students are expected to complete all practice work, both classwork and homework, on time and with high quality. Students are expected to be asking questions as needed in order to complete the practice work. So how will the process grade be determined? Students will be evaluated through each quarter, receiving feedback as necessary along the way. Final process grades will be posted at the end of each quarter and can be viewed on student report cards. The following basic rubric will be used to determine each student's process grade for each category. A more detailed Life Science 7 process reporting rubric has been provided on our Schoology course. An M means that the student meets or exceeds grade level expectations in this area, meaning that the student meets the expectations in this area on a regular basis with minimal or no reminders. A P means that the student partially meets the grade level expectations in this area, meaning that the student meets the expectations in this area more times than not, but with reminders. An I means that the student needs improvement in this area, meaning the student does not meet expectations in this area more times than not, even with reminders.